Socialite humiliated the cleaning lady in front of everyone, not knowing the CEO would fall in love with her that same night. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, what's the most unfair situation you've ever witnessed at a party? And at the end of the story, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy. The crash of silver on marble was sharp and final. A sound so violently out of place in the sophisticated hum of the Sterling Foundation's annual charity gala that it silenced a room of 100 conversations instantly. For a moment, all that could be heard was the soft music from the string quartet and the slow, horrifying drip of expensive red wine onto a pristine white floor. Elena Ramirez felt the impact before she fully processed what had happened. 1 second, she was carefully navigating the edge of the ballroom with her cleaning cart, a ghost in a simple gray uniform, invisible to the glittering guests. The next, she was stumbling forward, her cart overturned, a tray of canapés scattered across the floor, and a large, ominous red stain spreading rapidly across the immaculate designer gown of Victoria Davenport. Victoria, the city's reigning socialite and fiancée of the gala's host, let out a gasp so theatrical it could have won an award. She looked down at her dress, then at Elena, and her perfectly sculpted face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated disgust. "What have you done?" Victoria's voice was a high-pitched shriek that cut through the silence. "You clumsy, incompetent little thing. Look at my dress. This is a custom Oscar de la Renta. It's worth more than your entire miserable life." Every eye in the room was now fixed on the scene. Elena, kneeling on the floor, felt her cheeks burn with a humiliation so intense it was dizzying. She began to quickly pick up the scattered hors d'oeuvres, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," Elena said, keeping her voice low and professional, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "It was an accident. Someone bumped into my cart." "An accident?" Victoria scoffed, her laugh sharp and cruel. "People like you are an accident. You're paid to be invisible, not to destroy priceless property. Do you have any idea how much this will cost to repair?" "Of course you don't. You probably don't even have a bank account." From across the room, Arthur Sterling watched the scene unfold with cold, detached annoyance. As the CEO of Sterling Industries and the host of this gala, the last thing he needed was a public spectacle. His fiancée, Victoria, was known for her dramatic flair, but this was a new level of performance. He expected his staff to be flawless, invisible. This cleaner had failed on both counts. He was about to signal his head of security to handle the situation discreetly when Elena spoke, and the quiet authority in her voice made him pause. "Ma'am," Elena said, slowly rising to her feet. She was no longer looking at the floor but directly at Victoria, and her eyes, though filled with a quiet fire, showed no fear. "I have already apologized for the accident, but I will not apologize for my bank account, my life, or my presence here. I am doing my job." A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. A cleaner talking back to Victoria Davenport? It was unheard of. Victoria's face turned a shade of red that clashed horribly with her blonde hair. "How dare you speak to me that way? You are nothing. A speck of dust in this room. A speck of dust that was just doing her job until you and your friends, who were walking without looking, bumped into my cart." Elena replied, her voice still steady. "So perhaps, ma'am, if you're concerned about your priceless dress, you should be more careful where you walk." The silence in the room was now electric. Victoria was speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. She, who was always in control, had just been checkmated by a cleaning lady. Arthur felt a flicker of something he didn't recognize. It wasn't anger anymore. It was intrigue. He had expected tears, begging, a pathetic display of submission. Instead, this woman, this complete unknown, had responded with a dignity and sharp-edged wit that was utterly disarming. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't been disrespectful. She had simply stated the truth with an unshakable calm that made Victoria's tantrum look childish and pathetic. "You are fired," Victoria finally shrieked, finding her voice. "I want you out of this building, now." Elena simply nodded, her expression unreadable. She turned, righted her cleaning cart with a steady hand, and began to push it toward the service exit without another word. She didn't look back. She didn't give Victoria the satisfaction of a final, defeated glance. She just left, leaving a trail of stunned silence and a very large, very expensive red wine stain behind her. Arthur watched her go, a strange, unfamiliar curiosity stirring within him. He had seen hundreds of employees in his company, but he had never seen any of them. Until tonight. He looked at Victoria, who was now soaking up the sympathy of her friends, and for the first time he saw her not as his beautiful high-society fiancée, but as a cruel, petty woman who had just been intellectually outmaneuvered by a cleaning lady. And in that moment, Arthur Sterling made a decision. He needed to know who that woman was. Elena pushed her cart through the swinging doors of the service corridor, and only when she was out of sight did she allow her composure to crack. Her hands began to shake uncontrollably, and she leaned against the cold cinder block wall, closing her eyes and taking a deep, shuddering breath. The humiliation washed over her again, hot and sickening. Fired. She had been fired for an accident that wasn't even her fault. "Elena? Are you all right, honey?" She opened her eyes to see Maria, an older woman who had worked in the hotel's laundry for 20 years, looking at her with kind, worried eyes. "I'm fine, Maria," Elena lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just a little incident." "I heard the commotion," Maria said, placing a comforting hand on her arm. "Don't you pay any mind to that Victoria Davenport. She's got a heart as cold and empty as her designer handbags." Elena let out a shaky laugh. "Well, she just fired me." Maria's face fell. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That's not right. It wasn't your fault." "It doesn't matter anymore," Elena said, straightening up and pushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "I'll be fine. I always am." That was her mantra. "I'll be fine." She had been repeating it to herself for years, since her parents passed away in a car accident when she was 18, leaving her to raise her younger sister Lily, since she had to drop out of her architecture program at the city college to work 2 jobs. Since she had learned that the world wasn't a kind place, but you could survive it if you kept your head high and your comebacks sharp. "What are you going to do now?" Maria asked, her voice laced with concern. "Go home, tell Lily what happened, and start looking for another job in the morning," Elena said with a resolve she didn't quite feel. She said her goodbyes to Maria, gathered her few personal belongings from her locker, and walked out the back entrance of the hotel, stepping into the cool night air. The glittering lights of the city, which usually made her feel hopeful, now seemed to mock her. She had just started the long walk to the bus stop when a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up beside her, its engine a low, powerful purr. The tinted back window rolled down, revealing the chiseled, impassive face of Arthur Sterling. Elena froze, her hand tightening on the strap of her worn backpack. Of all the people she didn't want to see right now, he was at the very top of the list. "Miss Ramirez," he said, his voice as smooth and cold as the car's exterior. "Mr. Sterling," she replied, her own voice guarded. "Come to make sure the fired help gets off your property?" A flicker of something, was it surprise, amusement, crossed his face. "No, I came to talk to you. Get in the car." It wasn't a request, it was a command, delivered with the casual authority of a man who was never told no. Elena stood her ground. "I don't think so. I'm not one of your employees anymore, remember?" "That is precisely what I want to talk about," he said, his gaze intense. "Get in. It's not safe for a woman to be walking alone at this hour." She almost laughed. "I've been walking alone at this hour for the past 10 years, Mr. Sterling. I think I can handle it." He was silent for a moment, studying her. He had expected her to be either intimidated or eager for a handout. This quiet, defiant resistance was not part of any script he knew. "I am not your enemy, Miss Ramirez," he said, his tone softening almost imperceptibly. "I saw what happened in there. It was unfair." "Life is unfair," she retorted. "I don't need you to tell me that." He let out a sigh, a sound of faint frustration. "Look, I want to make amends for what my fiancé did. I'll write you a check for the damages, for the humiliation." That was it. That was the final straw. Elena felt a cold anger rise within her. She walked up to the open window, her eyes flashing. "Let me make something clear, Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice low but vibrating with intensity. "You can't write a check for my dignity. It's not for sale. Not to you, not to anyone." Arthur was genuinely stunned. In his world, everything had a price. Money was the universal solution, the ultimate apology. This woman, who clearly had nothing, had just rejected a sum that could likely change her life, all for a principle. "I didn't mean to offend you," he said, and for the first time he sounded sincere. "Then what did you mean?" she challenged. He was quiet for a long moment, his sharp, analytical mind trying to process this new, unexpected variable. He had come to offer her a simple transactional solution, but she wasn't a simple problem. "What Victoria did was wrong," he said finally. "And you have been reinstated. Your job is waiting for you tomorrow morning." Elena blinked, thrown off balance. "What?" But Victoria said. "Victoria is my fiancée, not the CEO of my company," he cut in. "I make the hiring and firing decisions, and I am deciding that you are not fired." Elena stared at him, trying to read his expression. He was offering her job back. After that scene, after she had talked back to his future wife. It made no sense. "Why?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Why would you do that?" Arthur looked at her, at the determined set of her jaw, at the intelligent fire in her eyes, and he gave the most honest answer he could. "Because," he said, a slow, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips, "it's been a very long time since anyone has left Victoria Davenport speechless. I believe a woman with that kind of talent is an asset to my company." He leaned back in his seat, and the window began to roll up. "I'll see you in the morning, Miss Ramirez." The Rolls-Royce glided away, leaving Elena standing alone on the sidewalk, her backpack in hand and her mind in a complete whirlwind. She had just been fired, insulted a socialite, rejected a millionaire's money, and been personally rehired by the CEO, all in the span of an hour. "What on earth just happened?" she whispered to the empty street. And for the first time that night, she felt a sliver of something other than despair. It was a dangerous, thrilling, and completely terrifying feeling of hope. The next morning, the air on the 50th floor of Sterling Industries was thick with a new kind of tension. The gala incident had spread through the corporate grapevine with the speed of a stock market crash. Elena Ramirez was no longer just a name on the cleaning crew roster. She was a legend, a myth. The janitor who had stared down the dragon and walked away unscathed. As Elena pushed her cart through the immaculate hallways, she felt the eyes on her. Hushed whispers erupted in her wake and died down the moment she turned her head. Secretaries suddenly became engrossed in their computer screens. Interns pretended to study a potted plant with intense academic focus. It was a bizarre form of celebrity, and Elena hated every second of it. "Great," she muttered to herself, replacing a trash bag in an empty office. "I'm not just the cleaning lady anymore. I'm that cleaning lady." She was so wrapped up in her own thoughts that she didn't hear the footsteps behind her until a voice, crisp and familiar, broke the silence. "Miss Ramirez." Elena jumped, spinning around to find Arthur Sterling standing in the doorway, holding a tablet and looking at her with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her professional mask snapping back into place. "Good morning. I was just reviewing the maintenance logs for this floor," he said, his tone all business. "I see you filed a request for a new mop head last week. The one you have is, and I quote, as effective as trying to clean with a sad, wet noodle." Elena felt her cheeks warm. She hadn't expected the CEO to be reading her maintenance requests. "It needed replacing, sir." "Indeed," he said, tapping on his tablet. "A new industrial-grade microfiber swivel head mop has been delivered to your supply closet. I trust it will meet your standards." Elena stared at him. Was he serious? The CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation was personally discussing the specs of her new mop. "Thank you, sir," she said, completely bewildered. "Efficiency is paramount in this company, Miss Ramirez," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "From the boardroom down to the custodial arts, I expect every employee to have the best tools for their job." He was about to turn away when he paused. "And one more thing," he said, a flicker of something almost like amusement in his eyes. "I would appreciate it if you refrained from describing our equipment in culinary terms. Sad, wet noodle is not a standard maintenance classification." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving Elena standing there with a fresh trash bag in her hand and a profound sense of confusion. Was this some kind of rich person mind game? A test? Or was Arthur Sterling just the strangest, most meticulous boss she had ever had? She had no idea, but But as she went to the supply closet and found the sleek, new, top-of-the-line mop, she couldn't help but feel a bizarre sense of being seen. That evening, Alina returned to the small, cramped but meticulously clean apartment she shared with her sister. The scent of chicken soup and lavender air freshener greeted her, a comforting contrast to the sterile, high-pressure world of Sterling Industries. "I'm home," she called out, dropping her backpack by the door. "In here." A bright, cheerful voice replied from the living room. Alina walked in to find her 17-year-old sister, Lily, curled up in a worn but beloved armchair, a thick textbook on her lap, and a pair of oversized glasses perched on her nose. Lily was the center of Alina's universe. Brilliant, witty, and fiercely optimistic, she was also battling a chronic kidney condition that required expensive medication and regular doctor's visits. The primary reason Alina had dropped out of college and worked tirelessly ever since. "How was your day in the land of the rich and famous?" Lily asked, looking up with a grin. "Did you slay any more socialite dragons?" Alina laughed, sinking onto the sofa. "You heard about that?" "Heard about it? Alina, you're a minor celebrity on Twitter. Janitor Justice is trending." Lily held up her phone, showing her a stream of posts. "People are calling you a working-class hero, my sister, the revolutionary." "I'm not a revolutionary, I'm just unemployed," Alina sighed, then quickly corrected herself. "Well, I was. I got my job back." Lily's eyes widened. "What? How? Did Victoria Davenport grow a conscience overnight?" "Not exactly," Alina said, a small, wry smile on her face. "Her fiancé rehired me." "The CEO? Arthur Sterling?" Lily leaned forward, her interest piqued. "The guy who looks like he was sculpted from granite and disapproval? Why would he do that?" "Honestly, I have no idea," Alina admitted. "He said something about me having a talent for leaving his fiancée speechless." She then told Lily about the bizarre conversation regarding the new mop. Lily listened, a thoughtful expression on her face. "That's weird," she said. When Alina finished, "Tell me about it. It's like he's observing me. I can't figure out if he's planning to promote me or have me committed." "Maybe he's just a decent guy under all that expensive wool," Lily suggested, pushing her glasses up. "Or maybe he's intrigued." "By what? My expert knowledge of floor cleaning equipment?" "By you, silly," Lily said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You're not like the women he's used to. You don't fawn over him, you challenge him." "Men like that," she added with the sage wisdom of a 17-year-old who had read a lot of classic novels, "they don't know what to do when they meet a woman who isn't impressed by their money." Alina shook her head, dismissing the idea. "He's not interested in me, Lily. He's engaged, and he's him. The CEO. I'm just the cleaning lady." "For now," Lily said, her eyes twinkling. "But something tells me this story is just getting started." Shh! Lily's prediction turned out to be more accurate than Alina could have imagined. The next day, as she was polishing the glass doors of a conference room, she saw Victoria Davenport marching down the hallway. She was dressed in a pristine white pantsuit, her heels clicking on the marble floor like tiny, angry hammers. Alina tried to become one with the glass, hoping Victoria wouldn't notice her. No such luck. "You," Victoria snapped, stopping directly in front of her. "I thought I had you fired." Alina straightened up, meeting her gaze calmly. "Good afternoon, Miss Davenport. As you can see, I'm still employed." Victoria's perfectly painted lips curled into a sneer. "Arthur may have a soft spot for charity cases, but don't get comfortable. You are a temporary amusement. Once he's bored of you, you'll be back on the street where you belong." "Is that a threat, ma'am?" Alina asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "It's a promise," Victoria hissed, leaning in closer. "Stay away from him. You are out of your league, and you are playing a game you cannot possibly win." "The only game I see being played," a deep voice interrupted, "is the one where you are harassing my employee." Both women turned to see Arthur Sterling standing a few feet away, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable, but his eyes cold as steel. "Arthur, darling." Victoria's tone shifted instantly to one of sweet, cloying affection. "I was just having a word with the staff, making sure everything is up to our standards." "Your standards seem to involve intimidation and unprofessional conduct," Arthur replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. He didn't even look at Victoria. His gaze was fixed on Alina. "Miss Ramirez, is there a problem here?" Alina was momentarily speechless. He had just defended her. in front of his own fiancée. "No, sir," she said, finding her voice. Miss Davenport was just sharing her perspective. Arthur's gaze shifted to Victoria, and for the first time, Alina saw a flicker of genuine anger in his eyes. "Victoria, my office, now." He turned and walked away without another word. Victoria shot Alina a look of pure venom before turning on her heel and following him, her angry clicks echoing down the hallway. Alina stood there, her cleaning cloth still in her hand, her heart pounding. Arthur Sterling had just publicly sided with her against his future wife. Lily was right. This story was definitely just getting started. The confrontation with Victoria left a strange residue in the air for the rest of an afternoon. Elena tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept replaying the scene. Arthur's cold defense of her, Victoria's venomous glare. It was like she had accidentally stumbled into the middle of a high-stakes drama she had no business being a part of. She just wanted to do her job, pay Lily's medical bills, and hopefully one day, reopen her architecture textbook. Later, as she was cleaning the executive break room, she saw him. Arthur was standing by the coffee machine, staring into a black mug as if it held the secrets of the universe. He looked tired. The impenetrable CEO facade had a few cracks in it. He looked up as she entered, and for a moment, an awkward silence hung between them. "Thank you," Elena said softly, breaking the silence. "For earlier." Arthur just nodded, taking a slow sip of his coffee. No employee of mine should be treated that way, especially not for doing their job. "Still," Elena said, wiping down a counter. "She's your fiancée. You didn't have to defend me." He was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "Victoria and I have an arrangement," he said finally, the word tasting like a compromise. Elena didn't press. It wasn't her place. She went about her work, the familiar, methodical movements calming her nerves. She noticed a worn leather sketchbook sitting on the table next to Arthur's briefcase. It was open to a page filled with intricate hand-drawn sketches of buildings. They were beautiful, modern, and full of a life that was starkly absent from the cold corporate world around them. "Are these yours?" she asked, unable to stop herself. Arthur looked at the sketchbook, then at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He had forgotten it was there. "A hobby," he said dismissively. "From another life." "They're incredible," Elena said, her voice filled with a genuine admiration that had nothing to do with him being her boss. "This one," she pointed to a design of a library with a soaring glass ceiling. "The way you've used the natural light, it's brilliant." He looked at the drawing, and a faint, sad smile touched his lips. "I wanted to be an architect once." The confession was so unexpected, so human, that Elena stopped what she was doing. "What happened?" "Life," he said with a shrug that didn't hide the weight behind the word. "My father passed away, and I had to take over the family business. Sterling Industries is a legacy, a duty. There was no room for hobbies." They stood in silence for a moment, two people from different worlds who had just discovered a shared, buried dream. Elena had been forced to give up her architecture studies to support her sister. He had been forced to give up his to support an empire. "I understand," Elena said softly, and he knew that she truly did. He looked at her then, really looked at her, not as a cleaner or an employee, but as a person who had just seen a piece of his soul that he kept hidden from the world. "Here," he said, pushing his coffee mug toward her. "You look like you could use this more than I do." Elena smiled, a real warm smile. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling." "Arthur," he corrected her gently. She took the mug, her fingers brushing against his. A small, electric jolt passed between them. It was unexpected, and for a moment they both just stood there, caught in the quiet intimacy of the empty break room. "Arthur," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It felt different. More real. He watched her take a sip of the coffee, a thoughtful expression on his face. He had spent the day dealing with the fallout from his argument with Victoria, with multi-million-dollar contracts, with the immense pressure of his world. But this quiet, simple moment of connection with the woman who polished his conference tables felt more significant than all of it. "You have a good eye for design, Miss Ramirez," he said, changing the subject, but the warmth remained in his voice. "I took a few classes," she admitted, a hint of old longing in her tone. Before life." He nodded, understanding the unspoken part of her sentence. He saw her glance at the clock on the wall, a subtle reminder that her shift was almost over. that their two worlds were about to separate again. "Do you draw?" he asked, gesturing toward her cleaning cart. "In your free time?" "Sometimes," she confessed, a faint blush on her cheeks. "When Lily's asleep, it helps me think." He could picture it. Elena in her small apartment, tired after a long day, sketching buildings that would never be built. A brilliant mind, a creative soul, hidden in plain sight. An idea began to form in his mind, a reckless, unconventional idea that was completely out of line with his usual, calculated way of doing things. "I have a proposal for you, Elena," he said, the use of her first name feeling both strange and natural. She looked up, her dark eyes curious. "A proposal?" "It has come to my attention," he began, slipping back into a more formal, CEO-like tone, though his eyes held a new light, that the decorative model of the new Sterling Tower in the main lobby is aesthetically displeasing. Elena frowned, confused. She had dusted that model 100 times. It was a masterpiece of miniature architecture. "It is?" "It is," he confirmed with a serious nod. "It lacks a certain perspective, a human touch." He paused, his gaze locking onto hers. "I would like to hire you as a special consultant to redesign it." Elena almost dropped the coffee mug. "What? Me? Mr. Sterling? Arthur? I'm a cleaner. I don't know the first thing about corporate architectural consulting." "You know about light," he said simply. "You know about soul. That's more than my entire team of expensive designers knows." He picked up his briefcase, his decision made. "We'll discuss the terms tomorrow. Your new duties will, of course, come with a significant salary increase. Think about it." He walked out of the break room, leaving Elena standing there, the warm coffee mug in her hands, her mind reeling. She had just been offered a consulting job on a multi-million-dollar project by the CEO of the company, a man she had met less than 48 hours ago during a red wine-related disaster. She looked down at her simple gray uniform, then at the sketchbook still open on the table, its pages filled with Arthur's forgotten dreams. "Lily," she whispered to herself with a dazed smile, "I think you were right. This story is just getting started." The next morning, Elena walked through the doors of Sterling Industries, not as a cleaner, but as a special consultant. The title felt absurd, like something out of a movie, and she half expected someone to jump out and yell, "Prank!" She wore the one professional-looking blazer she owned, an item she'd bought on clearance for her college interviews years ago. It felt like a costume for a role she hadn't yet learned. Her first meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in the main boardroom on the 50th floor, a room she had scrubbed on her hands and knees just 2 days prior. As she stepped inside, the 4 men already seated at the massive mahogany table fell silent. They were the company's top architects and designers, all dressed in sharp, minimalist outfits that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Ah, Miss Ramirez," one of the men, a stern-looking individual named Henderson, said, his tone dripping with skepticism. "We were told you'd be joining us, the new consultant." Elena felt her cheeks flush, but she held her head high. "Good morning, gentlemen." Just then, Arthur Sterling swept into the room, his presence immediately commanding attention. "Good, everyone's here," he said, taking his seat at the head of the table. He gave Elena a brief, encouraging nod before turning to the team. "As you know, the final model for the Sterling Tower expansion is complete. However, I am not satisfied. It's technically perfect, but it lacks a soul. Miss Ramirez is here to provide a new perspective." Henderson cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Mr. Sterling, this design was approved after months of work. It's a state-of-the-art structure. What perspective could a non-professional possibly offer?" The insult hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. Before Elena could even formulate a response, Arthur spoke, his voice dangerously calm. "A human one, Henderson, something that seems to be in short supply in this room." He then turned to Elena. "Miss Ramirez, you have the floor." All eyes were on her. Elena's heart hammered in her chest, but she thought of Lily, of the endless bills, of the quiet dignity her mother had always carried. She took a deep breath and walked to the front of the room, standing beside the intricate, sterile model of the skyscraper. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice steady, "you have designed a magnificent building. It's tall, it's powerful, it's efficient, it's a perfect symbol of corporate strength." She paused, letting the compliment land before delivering her critique. "But it's also cold. It's a fortress of glass and steel. People will work in this building, but they won't live in it. It doesn't have a heart. She picked up a marker and a blank sheet from the easel. A building's soul isn't in its height, but in how it connects with the people inside it. Her hand, once used to wielding a mop, now moved with a surprising, confident grace as she began to sketch. What this building needs is a space for people to breathe, a place to connect with nature, with each other. She drew a swift, elegant design for a rooftop garden. Not just a few sad-looking potted plants, but a lush, multi-level green space with a glass atrium, walking paths, and quiet nooks for employees to relax. A sky park, she said, the name coming to her in the moment. A place where someone can eat their lunch in the sun, have a quiet conversation, or just look at the sky and remember there's a world outside the office. When she finished, the room was silent. Henderson looked at the sketch, then at the model, a grudging respect dawning on his face. Arthur, however, was staring at Elena, completely captivated. He wasn't just seeing a good idea. He was seeing the architect she was always meant to be. "That," Arthur said, breaking the silence, his voice filled with a conviction that left no room for argument, "is the heart I was looking for. Henderson, I want new blueprints drawn up incorporating the sky park. Miss Ramirez will be leading the design on that project." Elena felt a jolt of shock. Lead the project? It was one thing to give a suggestion. It was another to be put in charge. Henderson and his team looked equally stunned. "Meeting adjourned," Arthur announced, standing up. "Miss Ramirez, please stay behind." Once the room was empty, Elena turned to Arthur, her mind reeling. "Lead the project? Arthur, I can't. I don't have the qualifications, the experience." "You have the vision," he said, stepping closer. "That's the one thing I can't buy." He looked at her sketch, then back at her. "You have a gift, Elena. Don't let anyone, especially yourself, tell you otherwise." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Elena was given a small, temporary office on the 50th floor and a team of junior architects to assist her. She spent her days in meetings, poring over blueprints, and her nights at home, sketching new ideas until her hands ached. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and for the first time in a decade, she felt truly alive. Her relationship with Arthur shifted into a strange, new territory. They were collaborators, partners in a creative process. They spent hours together, hunched over design tables, arguing about load-bearing walls and debating the merits of Japanese maple versus cherry blossom trees for the garden. In these late-night work sessions, the professional lines began to blur. "You're a tyrant," she said one evening, laughing as he rejected her third proposal for the garden's water feature. "You want a fountain, not a waterfall. It's about tranquility, not Niagara Falls. And you're a stubborn idealist who thinks a corporate building should feel like a wellness retreat," he retorted, but his eyes were smiling. In these quiet moments, they began to share more than just design ideas. "How is Lily?" he asked one night, noticing the dark circles under Elena's eyes. "She has a big exam coming up," Elena said, a hint of worry in her voice. "She's studying hard, but the stress can be tough on her." "She's a strong kid," Arthur said gently. "She gets it from her sister." The simple, sincere compliment made Elena's heart skip a beat. She found herself learning more about him, too. He told her about his father, a cold, demanding man who had never approved of his artistic inclinations and had groomed him from birth to be a ruthless businessman. "He used to say that architecture was a soft profession," Arthur confessed, his voice tinged with old resentment. "He believed the only thing worth building was an empire." "He was wrong," Elena said softly. "You can build both." He looked at her, a profound gratitude in his eyes. She understood him in a way no one else ever had. Not his business partners, not his society friends, and certainly not Victoria. Speaking of Victoria, she had been conspicuously silent since their confrontation. Too silent. Elena knew a woman like that didn't just accept defeat. She was waiting, planning. The counterattack came on a Tuesday morning, in the form of a sleek, glossy society magazine left pointedly on the break-room table. The headline was plastered across a full page, next to a flattering photo of Victoria. Sterling CEO's new pet project, from janitor to designer, a modern-day fairy tale or a corporate folly. The article was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive character assassination. It painted Elena as a cunning opportunist who had somehow charmed her way into the CEO's favor. It mocked her humble origins and questioned her qualifications, heavily implying that her promotion was due to something other than her talent. But the cruelest blow was the final paragraph. One has to wonder if Mr. Sterling's sudden interest in this particular employee is purely professional, or if he is simply taken with her tragic backstory. A single woman struggling to care for a chronically ill younger sister. While charity is admirable, one hopes the future of the Sterling Tower isn't being compromised by a CEO's misplaced pity. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. They had brought Lily into it. They had used her sister's illness as a weapon to humiliate her. She dropped the magazine as if it were on fire, her hands shaking with a cold, pure rage. She grabbed the magazine and marched straight to Arthur's office, not bothering to knock. She threw it onto his desk. "Is this your world, Arthur?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Is this the kind of game you and your fiancé play? Using a sick child to score points in a society column?" Arthur picked up the magazine, his face hardening into a granite mask as he read. When he looked up, his eyes were glacial. "This is Victoria's doing," he said, his voice dangerously low. "It has her signature all over it. And you're engaged to her." Elena shot back, the pain and anger finally spilling over. "This is the woman you're going to marry, a woman who would stoop this low." "No," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "I'm not." Elena stared at him, confused. Arthur picked up his phone from the desk and dialed a number, his movements precise and deliberate. He put the call on speakerphone. "Arthur, darling," Victoria's cheerful voice filled the room. "Did you see the lovely piece in Society today? I thought it was a charming little—" "The engagement is off, Victoria," Arthur interrupted, his voice devoid of any emotion. There was a stunned silence on the other end. "What did you say?" "I said we are done," he repeated, each word a final sharp nail in the coffin of their relationship. "You will not use my company, my projects, or the family of my employees as cannon fodder for your pathetic social games. You crossed a line. We are finished. My lawyers will be in contact with yours regarding the dissolution of our prenuptial agreements." "Arthur, you can't do this," she shrieked, her voice a mixture of disbelief and panic. "My family, the press, the gala, that is no longer my concern," he said coldly. "You wanted to play a game, Victoria. You just lost." He ended the call, plunging the office into a deafening silence. Elena stood there, completely stunned. He had just ended his engagement. For her. To defend her honor and Lily's. Arthur ran a hand over his face, looking utterly drained. "I am sorry, Elena," he said, his voice heavy with a regret that felt years deep. "I am so sorry I ever brought someone like that into a world that you had to be a part of." "Arthur," she began, but she didn't know what to say. He walked over to her, his eyes filled with a sincerity that was heart-stopping. "I told Victoria you were my employee. I was wrong. You are my partner, and your family," he said, his gaze intense, "is under my protection from now on. Whatever Lily needs, the best doctors, treatments, anything, it's taken care of. Consider it done." Elena felt tears well up in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of humiliation or anger. They were tears of a profound, overwhelming gratitude. He had not just defended her, he had chosen her. He had sacrificed his carefully constructed social and business alliance for her. "You don't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes," he said, his voice a low, steady promise. "I do." He gently reached out, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "You're not alone in this anymore, Elena. We're not alone." They stood there in the quiet of his office, the city glittering outside, the world of corporate intrigue and social backstabbing fading into the background. In its place was a new, fragile, and powerful connection, the CEO and the cleaner, the architect and his consultant, two broken dreamers who had just found in each other an unexpected and undeniable home. The aftermath of the broken engagement was a quiet earthquake that rumbled through the upper echelons of the city. The official announcement, a terse, professionally worded statement from Sterling Industries citing mutual and amicable parting of ways, did little to quell the storm of gossip. Society columns buzzed with speculation. Was Arthur Sterling having a breakdown? Had the cleaner, Elena Ramirez, truly managed to topple the city's most formidable power couple? Victoria, for her part, did not go quietly. She launched a covert media campaign, feeding anonymous quotes to bloggers and journalists, painting Arthur as a cold, ruthless tyrant who had callously discarded her for a charity case. She portrayed Elena as a manipulative siren who had bewitched him with a sob story. Inside the sterile walls of Sterling Industries, however, a different reality was unfolding. Arthur seemed lighter. The perpetual tension in his jaw had eased. He even smiled occasionally, a small, genuine gesture that sent ripples of shock through the executive floor. He had severed a tie that was more of a business merger than a relationship, and in doing so had freed a part of himself he'd kept shackled for years. Elena felt the shift too. The whispers in the hallway now held a note of awe rather than scorn. She was no longer just the janitor consultant. She was the woman for whom Arthur Sterling had upended his perfectly manicured world. The respect she now commanded was palpable, earned not just by her talent, but by the quiet dignity with which she handled the scandal. She and Arthur settled into a new, comfortable rhythm. Their work on the Sterling Towers Sky Park became an island of creative collaboration in the sea of corporate drudgery. Their late-night design sessions were now less about work and more about them. They would order takeout, talk for hours about everything and nothing, and find in each other a companionship neither had ever known. "You know," Elena said one evening, as they were looking over a new set of blueprints, "for a man who owns half the city, you have surprisingly terrible taste in pizza." Arthur looked up from the plans, feigning offense. "Pepperoni and pineapple is a classic. It's a perfect balance of sweet and savory." "It's an abomination," she declared with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "It's a culinary crime. Real pizza has mushrooms and olives and dignity." He laughed, a deep, easy sound that filled the quiet office. "Dignity pizza. Is that a thing?" "It is now," she said, a playful glint in her eyes. It was in these small, unguarded moments that their connection deepened. He learned about her fierce love for old black and white movies, her secret talent for baking the perfect chocolate chip cookie, and the quiet, unshakable optimism she held on to despite every hardship. She learned about his surprising passion for classical music, his encyclopedic knowledge of Roman history, and the profound loneliness that had been his constant companion since childhood. "I used to spend Christmas alone in this office," he confessed one night, his gaze fixed on the city lights below. "It was easier than facing the empty silence of the family mansion." Elena's heart ached for the boy he must have been, a lonely child in a world of immense wealth and emotional poverty. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her hand on his. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. He turned his hand over, his fingers lacing with hers. The touch was warm, steady, and felt as natural as breathing. They sat in a comfortable silence, the unspoken feelings between them more powerful than any words. He was her boss, she was his employee. He was a billionaire, she was struggling to make ends meet. The world saw them as an impossibility, but in the quiet of that office, they were just Arthur and Elena. Arthur made good on his promise to care for Lily. He arranged for her to see the top nephrologist in the country, a world-renowned specialist who, after a series of tests, proposed a new cutting-edge treatment plan. It was expensive, experimental, but it offered a real chance at a long-term solution, not just management of her condition. "I can't accept this, Arthur," Elena protested when he told her, the sheer scale of his generosity overwhelming. "This must cost a fortune." "It's a company medical expense," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Lily is the dependent of a valued employee. This is standard procedure." It was, of course, anything but standard procedure. But it was his way of giving her a gift she couldn't refuse, a gift wrapped in the cold, impersonal language of corporate policy. He was giving her peace of mind, the one thing her own hard work had never been able to buy. With Lily's health in the best possible hands, a huge weight was lifted from Elena's shoulders. She was able to pour her full energy into the Sterling Tower project, and her talent blossomed. Her initial concept for the Sky Park expanded into a full-scale redesign of the building's common areas. She introduced concepts of biophilic design, creating spaces that integrated nature, light, and a sense of community into the very structure of the building. The architects on Henderson's team, who had initially viewed her with suspicion, were now her biggest champions. They were in awe of her intuitive understanding of space and her ability to create designs that were not just beautiful, but deeply human. She doesn't just design buildings, Henderson admitted to Arthur in a private meeting. She designs experiences. She's a natural. Where did you find her? Sometimes, Arthur had replied with a small smile, the best assets are in the places you least expect them. But as their professional and personal lives became more intertwined, the unspoken question of what are we grew louder. They were best friends, creative partners, confidants. But the simmering current of attraction, the undeniable chemistry between them, was becoming impossible to ignore. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday night. They had been working late, finalizing the presentation for the new design to the board of directors. The office was empty, the city outside a blur of wet, neon lights. "I think we're finally done," Elena said, stretching her arms above her head with a tired but satisfied sigh. "Almost," Arthur said, his voice unusually soft. He was standing by the window, looking out at the rain. When he turned to face her, there was an intensity in his gaze that made her breath catch. "There's one more thing we need to discuss," he said, walking slowly toward her. "The budget for the Japanese maples?" she asked, her heart starting to beat a little faster. "No," he said, stopping just a few inches from her. He was so close she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Us." The word hung in the air between them, simple and terrifying. "Arthur, she began, but she didn't know what to say. "I know," he said, his voice a low murmur. "I know all the reasons why this is a bad idea. I'm your boss. I just broke off an engagement. Our worlds are different." He reached out, his hand gently cupping her face, his thumb stroking her cheek. "But I also know that since you walked into my life, I've felt more real, more alive than I have in my entire life. I'm falling in love with you, Elena." The confession was so raw, so honest, that it took her breath away. Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered, the words a release of a feeling she had been trying to suppress for weeks. He smiled, a slow, beautiful smile of pure relief and joy. He leaned in, and this time there was no conference table, no blueprints, no corporate world between them. His lips met hers, and the kiss was everything they had been holding back. It was tender and passionate, a culmination of shared dreams, late-night conversations, and a deep, unspoken understanding. It was a kiss that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. "So," he whispered, his forehead resting against hers, "what do we do now?" "I have no idea," she whispered back, a happy, tearful laugh escaping her. "But I think we'll figure it out together." Their new relationship was a secret, a fragile, beautiful thing they kept hidden from the prying eyes of the corporate world. It was stolen moments, a shared, knowing glance across a crowded boardroom, a quick, secret touch of hands in the elevator, long, wonderful weekends spent exploring the city, disguised in baseball caps and sunglasses like a pair of fugitive movie stars. For the first time, Elena saw the real Arthur. Not the powerful CEO, but the man who was endearingly clumsy in the kitchen, who had a surprisingly silly sense of humor, and who could spend hours in a museum, completely lost in a painting. And he saw her. Not the resilient cleaner or the brilliant consultant, but the woman who would laugh so hard she snorted, who loved old bookstores and rainy afternoons, and who had a heart so full of love and kindness it humbled him. They were happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. But they both knew the secret couldn't last forever. And they knew that Victoria Davenport was not the kind of woman to accept defeat gracefully. She had been publicly humiliated, her engagement to the city's most eligible bachelor broken. She was a viper, wounded and waiting for the right moment to strike. The strike came in the form of a manila envelope, delivered by a messenger to Arthur's office. There was no return address. Inside was a set of glossy, high-resolution photographs. They were of Elena, taken a few days earlier. She was standing outside a small, unassuming clinic in a quieter part of the city. She was with Lily, and they were both entering the St. Jude's Renal Care Center. Another photo showed them leaving, Elena's arm around her sister, a look of profound worry on her face. At the bottom of the stack was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. A tragic story. The brilliant young sister, with a failing kidney, the heroic older sister, who will do anything to save her. It would make a heartbreaking cover story, wouldn't it? especially when the public finds out that the only thing standing between this poor girl and a life-saving transplant is money. Your money. You have 48 hours to announce that our engagement is back on, or this story, along with a full, detailed copy of Lily's medical records, goes to every news outlet in the country. Your move, darling. Arthur stared at the photographs, a cold, murderous rage building in his chest. Victoria had not just crossed a line, she had incinerated it. She was threatening to expose Lily's private, painful medical struggle to the world, to turn her illness into a weapon for her own selfish revenge. He picked up his phone, his first instinct to call his lawyers, his security team, to unleash the full destructive power of his empire on Victoria. But he stopped. This wasn't a business problem. This was a personal one. A brutal, ugly one. He walked out of his office and found Elena in the design studio, happily sketching an idea for the Sky Park's lighting fixtures. She looked up and smiled, a smile so full of light and hope that it was like a knife to his heart. "What's wrong?" she asked instantly, her smile fading as she saw the look on his face. He didn't speak, he just handed her the envelope. He watched as she pulled out the photos, her face draining of all color. He saw her hands begin to tremble as she read the note. When she looked up at him, her eyes were filled with a terror and a despair that shattered him. "She knows," Elena whispered, her voice a broken, hollow sound. "She knows about Lily." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Victoria hadn't just discovered their secret, she was holding it like a loaded gun to Lily's head. Elena sank into a chair, the photographs and the threatening note clutched in her hand. Her mind, usually so sharp and resilient, was a chaotic storm of fear and rage. "How could she?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "How could anyone be so cruel as to use a child's illness?" Arthur knelt in front of her, his own face a mask of cold fury. "This is my fault," he said, his voice raw with self-loathing. "I brought her into our lives. I underestimated how vindictive she could be. This is on me." "No," Elena said, her strength returning in a sudden fierce wave. "This is not on you. This is on her. She's the monster here." She looked at him, her eyes burning. "What are we going to do?" Arthur's mind raced, weighing the options with the cold precision of a CEO in a crisis. He could give in, announce the engagement was back on, and sacrifice his own happiness to protect Lily's privacy. He could fight Victoria with lawyers and injunctions, but that would drag the matter into the public eye anyway, a messy, protracted legal battle that would still expose Lily. Or there was a third option, a dangerous, high-risk gambit that could either save them or destroy them completely. "We're not going to hide, and we're not going to surrender," Arthur said, his decision solidifying. "We're going to get ahead of her. We're going to tell the story ourselves, on our own terms." Elena stared at him, confused. "Tell the story? You mean, go public? About Lily? About us?" "Yes," he said, his gaze unwavering. "Victoria thinks our secret is our weakness. We're going to turn it into our strength. She wants to paint you as a victim, and me as a fool. We'll show them we're a team. We'll show them what real strength looks like." "But Lily," Elena's voice broke, "her privacy, her health, it will all be out there for the world to see, to pick apart." "We will control the narrative," Arthur insisted. "We won't let them turn Lily into a tabloid spectacle. We'll turn this into a platform to raise awareness for kidney disease, to talk about the importance of organ donation. We will take her ugly, pathetic threat and we will turn it into something good." It was an audacious plan, a breathtakingly bold move. It meant exposing their most private vulnerabilities to public scrutiny. It meant facing a storm of media attention. But it also meant taking back control. It meant refusing to be blackmailed, refusing to be victims. Elena looked at Arthur, at the fierce, protective fire in his eyes. He wasn't just her boss or her lover anymore. He was her partner, her ally, standing with her in the trenches. "Okay," she said, her own resolve hardening. "Okay, let's do it." The next 24 hours were a blur of strategic planning. Arthur assembled a small, trusted team, his sharpest PR executive, his most ruthless lawyer, and Elena. They worked out of his penthouse, turning the luxurious living room into a war room. The plan was a two-pronged attack. First, Arthur would use his connections to arrange an exclusive live interview with the city's most respected and empathetic journalist, a woman named Clara Hayes. Second, and this was Elena's idea, they would launch a charitable foundation in the same interview, the Lily Ramirez Fund for Pediatric Renal Care, with an initial endowment of $10 million from Sterling Industries. "We're not just telling a story," Alina had said, her voice ringing with a newfound power. "We're starting a movement." The evening of the interview, Alina and Arthur sat side by side in a television studio, the bright lights hot, the cameras like unblinking eyes. Elena's hands were cold, but her voice, when she spoke, was steady. She told their story. Not the salacious version Victoria wanted to sell, but the true one. She spoke of her parents, of her promise to care for her sister. She spoke of her struggles, of working 2 jobs, of the quiet desperation that had been her life. She spoke of the gala, of the humiliation, and of the unexpected kindness of a man who saw past her uniform. Then it was Arthur's turn. He didn't speak like a CEO. He spoke like a man. He admitted his own blindness, his own emotional isolation, and the profound way Elena had changed his life. "For years, I built an empire of things," he said, looking directly into the camera, but speaking to an audience of one. "Elena Ramirez taught me how to build a life." Finally, they spoke about Lily. They didn't portray her as a tragic victim, but as a brave, brilliant young woman, a fighter. And they announced the foundation, a legacy of hope born from a thread of hate. The interview was a bombshell. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. Phone lines at the station were flooded. Social media exploded. People were moved not by a scandal, but by a story of love, resilience, and profound decency. Donations to the Lily Ramirez Fund began pouring in from all over the country. In her palatial mansion, Victoria Davenport watched the interview, her face a mask of disbelief. Her perfect, cruel plan had not just failed, it had backfired spectacularly. She had tried to expose them, and instead, she had turned them into heroes. The next morning, the headlines were not about a corporate scandal. They were about the Sterling Hart, CEO and his partner, turned blackmail into a beacon of hope. Victoria was ruined. Her social standing evaporated overnight. She was no longer a powerful socialite. She was a pariah, a cruel bully exposed to the world. Business partners deserted her. Friends stopped returning her calls. Her own family, embarrassed by the public disgrace, distanced themselves. But in Arthur's penthouse, a quiet celebration was taking place. Lily, who had watched the interview from home, called them, her voice filled with tears of pride and love. "You're my heroes," she had said, "both of you." Elena and Arthur stood on the balcony, looking out at the city that now knew their story. The fear and uncertainty were gone, replaced by a deep, quiet peace. "We did it," Elena said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "No," he corrected her, wrapping his arm around her waist. "We're just getting started." He turned to her, his expression serious, but his eyes full of a love that was now open for the whole world to see. "There's one more thing we need to make public," he said. "What's that?" He took her hand, the one that had once wielded a cleaning cloth and was now helping to build a foundation, and brought it to his lips. "That I want you to be my wife," he said. Elena stared at him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. The world had thrown its worst at them, and they had not just survived, they had triumphed. Together. "Yes," she whispered, tears of pure joy streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." He smiled, a wide, beautiful smile that reached his eyes. And as he leaned in to kiss her, Elena knew that this was it. This was their story. Not a fairy tale, but something better. Something real. A love that had been tested by fire and had emerged not just intact, but stronger and brighter than ever before. The proposal, much like the rest of their story, didn't stay private for long. The image of Arthur Sterling kissing Elena Ramirez on the balcony of his penthouse, the city lights twinkling behind them, became the new, iconic photograph of their unlikely romance. The headlines shifted from blackmail and foundations to love and weddings. From janitor to jewel, Sterling CEO proposes to his real-life heroine. Their engagement was the talk of the city. For most, it was a source of inspiration, a real-life story of love conquering all. For a select, bitter few, mostly Victoria's former friends, it was a source of endless gossip and scorn. But Elena and Arthur were too wrapped up in their own quiet bubble of happiness to care. Planning the wedding became their new joint project, and it was a study in contrasts. Arthur, accustomed to orchestrating billion-dollar mergers, initially approached it with the same logistical precision. "I've had my team draft a preliminary guest list of 300, he announced one evening, showing Elena a spreadsheet organized by social importance and potential business affiliation. "The venue will be the Grand Imperial Ballroom, and I've already put a hold on the city's top 3 wedding planners." Elena looked at the spreadsheet, then at him, and burst out laughing. "Arthur, are we planning a wedding or a corporate takeover?" He blinked, genuinely confused. "Is there a difference?" "Yes," she said, taking the tablet from his hands. "A big one." She gently deleted the spreadsheet. "No Grand Imperial Ballroom, no guest list of 300 people I've never met, and definitely no wedding planners who think a centerpiece should cost more than a car." "Then what do you want?" he asked, completely adrift in this new, unstructured world of personal choice. "I want a wedding that feels like us," she said, her eyes shining. "I want it in a place that has a soul. I want it to be small, with only the people who truly matter to us. And I want to eat food that's actually delicious, not just artfully arranged on a plate." And so, the great wedding negotiation began. It was their first real test as a couple, a gentle clash of their two worlds. He came from a place where every event was a performance, a strategic display of power and wealth. She came from a place where a celebration meant a backyard barbecue with family and friends, full of laughter and paper plates. They found their compromise in the most unexpected of places: the city's old, beautiful botanical garden conservatory. It was a place of soaring glass ceilings, filled with lush tropical plants and the quiet hum of life, a perfect blend of his love for grand architecture and her love for nature. The guest list was whittled down to 50. Lily, of course, would be her maid of honor. Maria, her old friend from the laundry, was on the list. Henderson, who had become a grudgingly loyal friend, was invited. The rest were close family and the few friends who had stood by them. And the food? The food would be catered by a collection of the city's best food trucks, serving everything from gourmet tacos to wood-fired pizza. A nod to the humble, honest world where Elena felt most at home. As they planned, they were also merging their lives in more tangible ways. Elena and Lily moved into Arthur's vast, minimalist penthouse. Elena's first act was to fill the cold, gallery-like space with plants, colorful cushions, and shelves overflowing with books. "It's starting to look like a home," Arthur had said, looking around at the cheerful chaos with a surprised smile. "It always was," she had replied, kissing him. "It was just waiting for someone to live in it." Lily, whose new treatment was showing remarkable results, blossomed in the new environment. She and Arthur developed a surprisingly close bond, often found in deep discussion over a chessboard or debating the finer points of Roman history. He was the stable, supportive father figure she had never had, and she was the bright, inquisitive daughter he never knew he needed. Life was perfect, almost too perfect. Elena, who had spent her life waiting for the other shoe to drop, sometimes felt a flicker of anxiety in the midst of her newfound happiness. It was a feeling she tried to ignore, a small, dark cloud in an otherwise brilliant blue sky. The cloud arrived in the form of a registered letter, addressed not to Arthur, but to Elena. The return address was that of a prestigious law firm she didn't recognize. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The letter was cold, legal, and devastating. It was from the estate of her late parents, or rather from the bank that had managed their assets. It stated that due to previously undiscovered liabilities and outstanding debts against her father's small construction business, the family's life insurance policy, a modest sum she and Lily had been counting on for Lily's long-term care, was now void. The remaining balance was being seized to pay off creditors. Elena read the letter 3 times, the legal jargon swimming before her eyes. But the bottom line was brutally clear. The one financial safety net she thought she had, the last tangible piece of her parents' legacy, was gone. Just like that. She sank onto the sofa, the letter falling from her hand. It wasn't just about the money. It was the crushing weight of the past rearing its ugly head, a reminder that she had come from a world of debt and struggle, a world so far removed from Arthur's. She thought about telling him immediately. But a familiar, stubborn pride held her back. He had already done so much for them. He was paying for Lily's treatment, had given her a career, had offered her a future she'd never dreamed of. How could she come to him now, like a damsel in distress, with yet another financial problem. This was her family's debt, her problem to solve. She hid the letter, a small toxic secret, in the heart of their happy home. She told herself she would handle it. She would take on extra consulting work, she would budget, she would figure it out on her own. She had always taken care of herself and her sister, and she wouldn't stop now. But the secret began to eat at her. She became distracted, withdrawn. The easy laughter that now filled the penthouse was replaced by a quiet, gnawing worry. Arthur noticed the change immediately. "Is everything all right, Elena?" he asked one evening, seeing the distant, troubled look in her eyes. "You seem far away." "I'm fine," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just a little tired. The wedding planning is more stressful than I thought." He accepted her answer, but she could see the doubt in his eyes. He knew her too well now. He knew when she was hiding something. The situation came to a head a week later. They were at a charity auction, one of the few formal events Elena had agreed to attend. An item came up for bid. A rare, first-edition copy of an architecture book Elena had once mentioned was her favorite. "I have to get that for her," Arthur murmured, a determined look on his face. The bidding was fierce, but Arthur, as always, was relentless. $50,000. He bid finally, silencing the room. The gavel came down. The book was his. He presented it to her later that evening, his face glowing with pleasure. "For the architect of my heart," he said softly. Elena looked at the beautiful, priceless book, and instead of joy, she felt a wave of shame so profound it was sickening. $50,000. For a book, an amount that could have solved all her problems, paid off her family's debt, and secured Lily's future, all without a second thought from him. The chasm between their two worlds had never felt so vast. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She couldn't look him in the eye. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Arthur found her on the balcony, staring out at the city, the unopened book on the table beside her. "You don't like it," he said, his voice flat with a disappointment he couldn't hide. "It's beautiful, Arthur," she said, her back still to him. "It's just—" "Just what?" he pressed, walking to stand beside her. "Elena, talk to me. What's been going on with you this past week? You're not yourself." She finally turned to face him, and the anguish in her eyes was a physical blow. "I can't do this, Arthur," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Can't do what? Can't do this," she said, gesturing vaguely at the opulent penthouse at the glittering city below. "This world. Your world. I don't belong here." "That's ridiculous," he said, completely bewildered. "Of course you belong here. You belong with me." "No, I don't," she said, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pain and pride. "You spend $50,000 on a book like it's nothing, while I'm lying awake at night trying to figure out how to pay off the debts my father left behind." The secret was out, raw and ugly. Arthur stared at her, stunned. "Debts? What debts? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's my problem, not yours," she cried. "Because I don't want to be another one of your charity cases. I don't want to be the poor girl you saved. I want to be your partner, your equal. But how can I be, when your world is so different from mine? When you can solve with a single check what I've been fighting for my entire life?" He finally understood. It wasn't about the money, it was about her independence, her sense of self-worth, which she felt was being eroded by his immense wealth. "Elena," he said, his voice quiet and firm, "being partners doesn't mean we have to be financial equals. It means we face our problems together. Your problems are my problems. Your debts," he said, taking her hands, "are our debts." "I can't let you pay them," she insisted, shaking her head. "Then we'll pay them together," he countered. "You said you wanted to take on more consulting work. Fine. Sterling Industries will officially hire you as the lead consultant for our new European expansion project. The salary will be more than enough to cover any outstanding debts within a year. You will earn it, Elena. Every single penny. It's not charity, it's a job. A job you are more than qualified for." She looked at him, her tear-filled eyes searching his. He had found a solution, not one that involved a handout, but one that preserved her dignity, that respected her need to stand on her own 2 feet. "You really are a brilliant strategist, aren't you?" she whispered, a watery smile touching her lips. "I have my moments," he said, his own smile returning. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "We're a team, Elena Ramirez. In everything. No more secrets. No more fighting battles alone. Do you understand? She buried her face in his chest, the tension and fear of the past week finally melting away. I understand, she murmured. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't, he whispered into her hair. And as they stood there high above the city, they both knew they had just navigated their first real storm as a couple, and had come out the other side, not just intact, but stronger. With the secret of her family's debt out in the open and a plan in place to resolve it, a profound sense of peace settled over Elena. The small, dark cloud of anxiety had dissipated, leaving only the bright, clear sky of their future. She threw herself into her new role as lead consultant for Sterling's European expansion, her sharp mind and intuitive grasp of architecture proving invaluable. Arthur watched with immense pride as she commanded boardrooms, negotiated with international partners, and earned the unwavering respect of everyone she worked with. She wasn't just his fiancée, she was a formidable force in her own right. Their wedding planning resumed, this time with a new, easy sense of partnership. The food truck idea was solidified, the guest list was finalized, and Elena, with Lily's enthusiastic help, found the perfect dress. A simple, elegant, off-the-rack gown that made her feel more beautiful than any custom Oscar de la Renta ever could. You look like a queen, Lily had said, her eyes shining with tears as Elena stood before the mirror in the bridal shop. I feel like one, Elena had whispered back, her heart full. As the wedding day grew closer, Arthur decided it was time to take a step he had been postponing for years, reconnecting with his own estranged family. His relationship with his mother, a distant, society-obsessed woman named Eleanor, had been strained for years, and his younger brother, Thomas, a free-spirited artist, had been living in self-imposed exile in Europe for the better part of a decade, having fled the suffocating expectations of the Sterling legacy. I want them to be at our wedding, Arthur told Elena one evening. I want them to meet you, to see the man I've become because of you. Elena, who valued family above all else, encouraged him completely. Of course, they should be there, Arthur. It's important. The phone call to his mother was as chilly as he expected. A wedding? Eleanor Sterling's voice was like ice cracking over the phone. To the cleaning woman, Arthur, have you lost your mind entirely? The scandal is still fresh. What will people say? I don't care what people say, Mother, Arthur had replied, his voice firm. I'm happy. I'm in love. I want you to be there to share that with us. There was a long, cold pause. I will consider it, Eleanor had finally said, a non-committal response that was her specialty. The call to his brother, however, was a different story. Tommy? Arthur said, feeling a lifetime of distance in that single word. Arthur? Is that you? Thomas's voice on the other end was a mixture of shock and suspicion. Did the world end? Did you finally decide to trade your corporate empire for a life of painting and existential angst? Arthur laughed, a genuine, relieved sound. Not exactly, but I'm getting married. This was met with a stunned silence. Married? You? To whom? Please don't tell me it's that human ice sculpture, Victoria. No, Arthur said, a smile in his voice. Her name is Elena, and she's extraordinary. You'd like her. Extraordinary enough to thaw the Sterling ice prince? Thomas teased, but there was a new warmth in his voice. Well, this I've got to see. Send me the details. I'll be there. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a happy, chaotic blur. Elena finalized the details for the Sky Park, which the board had unanimously and enthusiastically approved. Lily's new treatment was working wonders. She had more energy, her color was back, and for the first time in years, her future felt limitless. And Arthur, for his part, was learning to let go of his rigid control, finding a surprising joy in the unpredictable, messy, and wonderful reality of building a life with Elena. The day before the wedding, Thomas arrived. He was the complete opposite of Arthur, wild, curly hair, a wardrobe that consisted mostly of paint-splattered jeans, and a laugh that was loud and infectious. He took one look at Elena, then at his brother's uncharacteristically happy face, and pulled her into a warm hug. So you're the miracle worker, he said, his eyes twinkling. Anyone who can get this old grump to smile deserves a medal. Elena laughed, liking him instantly. It wasn't that hard. You just have to know the right pizza toppings. That evening, the four of them, Arthur, Elena, Lily, and Thomas, had a quiet dinner at the penthouse. It was a pre-wedding celebration, a gathering of their new, unconventional family. The easy laughter, the shared stories, the sense of belonging, it was everything Alina had ever dreamed of. But as they were clearing the plates, a formal, uniformed doorman announced an unexpected visitor. "Mrs. Eleanor Sterling is here to see you, sir." A sudden chill fell over the room. Arthur's face hardened, the old, familiar mask of cool detachment slipping back into place. "Send her up," he said, his voice flat. Elena placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "It's okay," she whispered. Eleanor Sterling swept into the penthouse like an Arctic front. She was a tall, impeccably dressed woman whose perfectly coiffed silver hair and diamond necklace seemed to radiate a frosty disapproval. She surveyed the room, the comfortable clutter, the laughing family, and her thin lips tightened. "Arthur," she said, her voice as crisp as a winter morning. She offered him a cheek to be kissed, a gesture devoid of any warmth. Her gaze then fell on Elena, and she looked her up and down with an expression that made Elena feel like she was a specimen under a microscope. "So you are the one," Eleanor said, her tone making it clear that the one was not a compliment. "Mother, this is Elena Ramirez, my fiancée," Arthur said, his voice strained. "And this is her sister, Lily." "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Sterling," Elena said, extending her hand with a polite, steady smile. Eleanor ignored the outstretched hand, her cold blue eyes, so like Arthur's used to be, flicking to Lily, who was sitting quietly in her armchair. "I read about your situation," Eleanor said, the word dripping with a condescending pity. "How very tragic." "Actually," Lily piped up, her voice clear and strong, "my situation is one of hope and progress, thanks to the foundation your son helped us start, but I appreciate your concern." Eleanor was momentarily taken aback by Lily's polite but firm rebuttal. She turned her attention back to Arthur. "I came to give you this," she said, handing him a small, ornate, velvet box. "It's a family heirloom, the sterling pearls. It is traditional for the bride to wear them." The gesture was meant to look generous, but the implication was clear. "You may be marrying her, but she will only be acceptable if she is adorned with our legacy, our wealth." Arthur took the box, his jaw tight. "Thank you, Mother. That's very thoughtful. I am merely trying to maintain a semblance of decorum in this unusual situation," Eleanor said, her gaze sweeping over Elena's simple dress. "The wedding is tomorrow, I presume? At a garden, with food trucks?" She said the words as if they were a foreign, distasteful language. "Yes," Arthur said, his patience clearly wearing thin. "It will be a celebration of love, not a social climbing event." "How quaint," Eleanor murmured. She then turned her icy gaze back to Elena. "A word of advice, my dear," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though it was loud enough for everyone to hear. "Arthur has a tendency to be drawn to projects. Just be sure you know the difference between being a wife and being his latest act of charity." The insult was so sharp, so exquisitely cruel, that it left a stunned silence in its wake. Thomas, who had been watching the scene with a thunderous expression, was about to explode, but Elena spoke first. She stood up, walking calmly to face Eleanor Sterling, and her smile was serene, but her eyes were like steel. "Thank you for the advice, Mrs. Sterling," she said, her voice as smooth as silk. "And may I offer you a piece of advice in return?" Eleanor raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, surprised by the challenge. "You're right," Elena continued. "Your son was drawn to me as a project. But the project wasn't to fix my life. The project was to remind him how to live his own, to remind him that a home is more than a mansion, that a family is more than a name, and that a heart is more than an asset on a balance sheet." She paused, her gaze unwavering. "And I'm happy to report that the project was a complete success. So you see, I am not his act of charity. I am his greatest return on investment." Eleanor Sterling was, for the second time in her life, rendered completely speechless by a woman who was supposed to be a nobody. Thomas let out a bark of triumphant laughter. Lily was beaming with pride. Arthur looked at Elena, and the love in his eyes was so profound, so absolute, that it filled the entire room. He walked to her, took her hand, and kissed it. "My mother will be staying at the Four Seasons for the duration of her visit," he said, his voice calm but with an edge of finality. "I believe she'll be more comfortable there." Eleanor, her face a mask of cold fury, finally found her voice. "Arthur, you are making a grave mistake." "No, Mother," he said, his eyes never leaving Elena's. "For For the first time in my life, I am making the perfect decision." He then looked at the velvet box in his hand, the one containing the sterling pearls. With a deliberate, almost casual movement, he walked over to the open balcony and dropped the box over the side, letting it fall 50 stories to the street below. "We won't be needing those," he said, turning back to his family, his new family. "Elena will be wearing her own jewels tomorrow." As Eleanor stormed out of the penthouse defeated, Elena leaned into Arthur, her heart overflowing. She had faced down another dragon, but this time, she hadn't been alone. This time, she had a partner, a family, and a future that was brighter than any diamond. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect October morning. The air in the Botanical Garden Conservatory was warm and fragrant, a vibrant, living cathedral of green. Elena stood in a small anteroom, looking at her reflection. She wore the simple ivory dress, and in her hair, instead of the sterling pearls, was a single, perfect white rose Lily had picked from the garden that morning. "You're shaking," Lily said, coming to stand beside her and adjusting a fold in her dress. "I'm not," Elena lied, then laughed when she saw her own trembling hands. "Okay, maybe a little. It feels real. All of it." "It is real," Lily said, her own eyes shining. "You deserve this, Elena. You deserve to be happy." Maria, her old friend from the laundry, popped her head in. "It's time, honey. Your prince is waiting." Elena took a deep breath, took Lily's arm, and they walked toward the main conservatory. The music from the string quartet swelled as she appeared. The 50 guests, a small, intimate gathering of their chosen family, rose to their feet. But Elena only had eyes for one person. Arthur stood at the makeshift altar, under a beautiful arch of flowering vines. He looked impossibly handsome, and the look in his eyes as she walked toward him was a vow in itself. It was a look of pure, unadulterated adoration. Thomas, his best man, gave him a supportive pat on the back as he saw his brother's composure begin to crumble. When Elena reached the altar, Arthur took her hands, his own trembling slightly. "You look," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "like the beginning of the rest of my life." The ceremony was short, simple, and deeply personal. They didn't have a traditional officiant. Instead, Henderson, the once skeptical architect who was now a dear friend, read a passage from a book about the poetry of structures. Thomas read a playful, heartfelt poem he had written for them. And Lily, in a voice clear and strong, spoke about the profound, life-changing power of sisterly love and second chances. When it came time for their vows, they spoke from the heart, their words unscripted and raw. "Elena," Arthur began, his gaze never leaving hers. "For most of my life, I lived in a fortress of my own making, a place of wealth and power, but also of profound loneliness. You didn't just walk into my life, you tore down the walls. You showed me that a home isn't a building, it's a feeling. You are my home, and I promise to spend every day of my life being worthy of the love you've shown me." Elena was crying freely now, happy tears she didn't bother to wipe away. "Arthur," she said, her voice a soft whisper. "You saw me when I felt invisible. You saw a strength in me that I had forgotten I had. You took my broken dreams and helped me build new ones. You taught me that it's safe to trust, safe to love again." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your co-architect in this beautiful life we're going to build together." When Henderson, with a broad, happy smile, finally pronounced them husband and wife, Arthur cupped Elena's face in his hands and kissed her. It was a kiss of promises fulfilled, of a future begun, and of a love that had proven itself stronger than any obstacle. The small crowd erupted in joyful cheers. The reception was everything Elena had wanted it to be. The food truck served up a delicious, unpretentious feast. Laughter echoed through the conservatory as guests mingled, danced, and celebrated. Eleanor Sterling had, unsurprisingly, declined to attend, a fact for which everyone was silently grateful. "To Arthur and Elena," Thomas toasted, raising his champagne glass. "May your life together be as unexpected, chaotic, and beautiful as the way you met. And may you always remember," he added with a wink at Elena, "the revolutionary power of a well-thrown glass of red wine." Later that evening, as the party swirled around them, Arthur pulled Elena onto a small, quiet balcony overlooking the gardens. "Happy, Mrs. Sterling?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her. "Beyond happy," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Though I think I'll keep my own name professionally. Ramirez Designs has a nice ring to it." He laughed. I wouldn't expect anything less. He looked down at her, his expression turning serious. I have a wedding gift for you, he said. Arthur, you've already given me everything. Not everything, he said. He handed her a simple, elegant key. What's this? It's the key to a studio space I bought in the Arts District, he said, watching her face carefully. It's large, full of natural light, with a great view of the skyline. It's a place where you can start your own firm, Ramirez Designs. Elena was speechless. It was the most thoughtful, most perfect gift he could have possibly given her. It wasn't just a space, it was a validation of her dream, a testament to his belief in her talent. But the European expansion, she began. I'm still working on. You can consult for Sterling Industries as much or as little as you want, he said. But you're too talented to work in anyone's shadow, Elena. Not even mine. It's time for you to build your own empire. She threw her arms around his neck, her heart overflowing. I love you, she whispered. I love you. He replied, holding her tight. And I can't wait to see what you'll build. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks in a quiet, secluded villa in Italy, a trip that was a perfect blend of architectural exploration and romantic bliss. They spent their days wandering through ancient cities, sketching in sun-drenched piazzas, and their nights talking and dreaming under a canopy of stars. When they returned to the city, they settled into a life that was a beautiful, seamless fusion of their two worlds. Elena launched Ramirez Designs, and within months, her innovative, human-centric approach to architecture had her small firm flooded with clients. She became a rising star in the design world, celebrated for her unique ability to create spaces that had a soul. Arthur, for his part, found a new passion in his work. Inspired by Elena, he began to transform Sterling Industries, shifting the company's focus toward sustainable, community-oriented projects. He launched initiatives to build affordable, beautifully designed housing and became a leading voice in ethical corporate responsibility. Together, they were not just a power couple. They were a force for good. The Lily Ramirez Fund was a resounding success, helping dozens of families and funding groundbreaking research. And Lily herself was thriving. Her new treatment was so effective that she was in near complete remission, and she had been accepted with a full scholarship to her dream university, where she planned to study medicine. Their life was full, happy, and blessedly normal. They were just a family that had been forged in the most unlikely of circumstances, but was all the stronger for it. But life, Elena knew, was never a straight line. The past always had a way of casting long shadows. The shadow appeared on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, a little over a year after their wedding. Elena was in her new studio, reviewing blueprints, when her assistant buzzed her. There's a Mr. Davenport here to see you. The assistant's voice was hesitant. Elena frowned. Davenport? The name sent a chill down her spine. Victoria's father? Yes, he insists it's urgent. Elena's first instinct was to refuse. She had nothing to say to the family that had tried to destroy her. But a flicker of curiosity and a sense of unease made her reconsider. Send him in. Richard Davenport was an older, imposing man with the same cold, aristocratic air as his daughter. But today that arrogance was gone, replaced by a look of haggard desperation. Mrs. Sterling, he began, his voice strained, thank you for seeing me. I know we are not friends. We are not, Elena agreed, her tone neutral. What do you want, Mr. Davenport? He wrung his hands, a gesture so out of character for the powerful tycoon that it was jarring. It's Victoria, he said, his voice cracking. She's in trouble. Serious trouble. Elena waited, her expression unreadable. After the scandal, he continued, struggling with the word, she became involved with some very unsavory people. Bad investments, gambling debts. She's lost everything. Now she owes a great deal of money to a man who is not known for his patience. He looked at Elena, his eyes pleading. He's threatening her safety, her life. And what does this have to do with me? Elena asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. He's given her a deadline, 3 days to pay him back $5 million, Davenport said, the number hanging in the air like a death sentence. We don't have it. Our family's assets are tied up. We're on the verge of bankruptcy ourselves. He took a deep, shaky breath. You are her only hope. I am asking you, I am begging you to speak to your husband. Ask him to help us, to save my daughter's life. Elena stared at him, a storm of conflicting emotions raging inside her. Victoria, the woman who had publicly humiliated her, who had threatened to expose her sick sister, who had tried to ruin her life, was now in desperate need of her help. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. "Please," Davenport whispered, his pride completely shattered. "She's my only child. I can't lose her." Elena stood in silence, the fate of her former nemesis, the woman who had tried to destroy her, now resting entirely in her hands. Elena sat in her studio long after Richard Davenport had left, his desperate plea echoing in the silent room. $5 million, a life in the balance, Victoria's life. Her mind was a battlefield of conflicting emotions. A cold, hard part of her, the part that had been forged in years of struggle, whispered that Victoria was getting what she deserved. Justice. Karma. Whatever you wanted to call it, it was a fitting end for a woman who had shown no mercy to others. But another part of her, the part that had offered her last few dollars to a homeless man, the part that had forgiven Arthur, the part that Lily's love had kept soft, felt a deep, profound unease. Could she really stand by and do nothing while a person's life was at stake, even if that person was Victoria Davenport? To let her be harmed would be to stoop to her level, to let Victoria's poison infect her own soul. She knew what she had to do, but she also knew she couldn't make this decision alone. That evening she found Arthur in his study, going over the quarterly reports for the foundation. The soft lamplight cast a warm glow on his face, a face that had become her anchor, her home. "Arthur," she said, her voice quiet, "we need to talk." He looked up, his smile fading as he saw the serious, troubled expression on her face. "What is it?" She told him everything. About Richard Davenport's visit, about Victoria's debts, about the threat to her life. She laid it all out, the ugly, complicated mess, and then she waited, her heart pounding, for his reaction. Arthur listened in a cold, hard silence, his face a granite mask. When she finished, he stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. "No," he said, his voice flat and final. Elena's heart sank. "No, no," he repeated, turning to face her, his eyes like ice. "I will not give that woman a single cent. She tried to destroy you. She threatened your sister. She is a venomous, irredeemable person who has finally been bitten by her own snakes. This is her problem, not ours." "But a man is threatening her life," Elena protested. "She chose to get involved with dangerous people. Those are the consequences of her choices," he said, his tone leaving no room for debate. "I will protect you and our family. I will not extend that protection to the person who tried to tear our family apart." Elena stared at him, seeing a flicker of the old Arthur, the cold, ruthless CEO who operated on a strict, unyielding code of logic and retribution. "So that's it? We do nothing? We just let whatever happens, happen?" "Yes," he said, "that is exactly what we do. It's what she deserves." "No one deserves to be in fear for their life, Arthur." Elena's voice rose, filled with a passion that surprised even herself. "Not even her." "You are a better person than I am, Elena," he said, his voice softening slightly, but his resolve was unshaken. "But my priority is you, and I will not risk our peace, our safety for her." They had reached an impasse. It was their first real fight, a fundamental clash of their worldviews. He saw it as a matter of justice and protection. She saw it as a matter of humanity. "I can't accept that," Elena said, her voice a low, determined whisper. "I can't be the kind of person who stands by and does nothing." "And what do you propose we do?" he challenged. "Write a check and reward her for her atrocious behavior?" "No," she said, an idea beginning to form in her mind, an idea that was as audacious and unconventional as she was. "We don't give her the money. We give her something else, a chance." The next day, Elena, using her own resources from her flourishing design firm, hired a private investigator. She didn't want Arthur's money. This had to be her own act. She needed to know if Richard Davenport's story was true. Within 24 hours, the investigator confirmed it all. Victoria was in deep, her debts owed to a ruthless loan shark known for his violent methods. The threat was real. Elena then made a phone call, not to the loan shark, but to Victoria. "Meet me," Elena said, her voice calm and firm when Victoria answered, her own voice a shaky, suspicious mess. "The coffee shop on Elm Street, in 1 hour. Come alone." The small, quiet coffee shop was a world away from the glamorous galas where they had last faced off. Victoria arrived looking haggard, the designer clothes hanging on a frame that was now too thin, the perfect makeup failing to hide the dark circles of fear under her eyes. "What do you want?" Victoria snapped, sinking into the chair opposite Elena. "To gloat? To watch me squirm?" "No," Elena said, pushing a cup of coffee toward her. "I'm here to offer you a deal." Victoria let out a bitter, disbelieving laugh. "A deal? I have nothing to offer anyone." "You have one thing," Elena said, her gaze steady. "Your future, if you want one." She then laid out her proposal. It was breathtaking in its audacity. "I will not give you $5 million, Elena said. "Money is what got you into this mess. It's a temporary fix. I'm offering you a permanent one." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was not a check, but a job offer. "A job?" Victoria stared at the paper as if it were written in a foreign language. "Yes," Elena said. "The Lily Ramirez Fund has grown. We're launching a new division focused on providing support and resources for families facing medical debt. We need a director of fundraising, someone who knows the world of high society philanthropy, who can navigate charity galas, who can convince wealthy people to open their wallets." She paused. "Someone exactly like you." Victoria was speechless. You want me to work for you? For your foundation?" "I'm offering you a job, Victoria, a salary, a way to pay back your debts, on your own. A way to rebuild your life with your own two hands, using the skills you actually have for something good." Elena leaned forward. "I will also have my lawyers negotiate with your creditor. We will work out a payment plan. We will guarantee the debt will be paid as long as you hold up your end of the bargain." Victoria looked at Elena, a storm of emotions on her face. Shock, humiliation, but also a flicker of something else. A tiny, fragile spark of hope. "Why?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "After everything I did to you, why would you do this?" "Because my sister taught me about second chances," Elena said simply. "Because Arthur taught me that the best investments are in people. And because I believe that the best way to defeat an enemy," she added, a small, wise smile on her face, "is to turn them into an ally." When Elena told Arthur what she had done, he was silent for a long, long time. He looked at his wife, at the incredible, unexpected, and profoundly decent woman he had married. The woman who had faced down her own tormentor, not with revenge, but with an offer of redemption. "You," he said finally, his voice thick with an awe and a love that was absolute, "are the most extraordinary person I have ever known." He shook his head, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I was going to protect you from the world, but the truth is, you're the one who is going to save it." He pulled her into his arms. The last of the old, cold Arthur, the part that believed in retribution and walls, melted away in that moment, replaced by the profound warmth of his wife's boundless capacity for grace. The story of Victoria Davenport's fall and subsequent surprising new career became another legend in the city. She took the job. It was a difficult, humbling road. But under Elena's quiet, firm guidance, she began to change. The work gave her a purpose she'd never had, and for the first time in her life, she earned something on her own. She and Elena never became close friends, but they forged a relationship built on a foundation of mutual, hard-won respect. A year later, at the second annual gala for the Lily Ramirez Fund, Elena and Arthur stood on the stage together. Lily, now a thriving pre-med student, was in the audience, along with Thomas and a surprisingly mellowed Eleanor Sterling, who had begun to thaw in the face of her new daughter-in-law's undeniable grace. "This foundation," Elena said, speaking to the crowded room, "was born from an act of hate, but it has grown into a testament to the power of love and forgiveness." Arthur took the microphone from her. "My wife," he said, his voice ringing with a pride and love that filled the entire room, "has a talent for redesigning things. She redesigned a skyscraper. She redesigned my company. She redesigned my heart." He turned to her, taking her hand. "And together, we hope to help redesign a world where kindness is the strongest structure of all." Later that night, back in the penthouse that was now a true home, filled with warmth and laughter, they stood on the balcony, looking out at the city. "You know," Elena said, leaning her head on his shoulder, "I was thinking about that first night. The spilled wine, the ruined dress. A night that changed the world," he said, kissing the top of her head, "or at least, our world." I was so scared then, she confessed. I felt so small and alone. He turned her to face him, his hands holding hers. You were never small, Elena, and you will never be alone again, I promise. She smiled, her heart full and at peace. Theirs was a love story that had started with a crash, a story of two broken people from two different worlds who had found in each other a way to rebuild. They had faced down dragons, both internal and external, and had built an empire not of steel and glass, but of hope, forgiveness, and a love that was as strong and as resilient as they were. The past was a part of their story, but it no longer defined them. The future, they knew, was a blueprint they would continue to design, together, for the rest of their lives. What did you think of the story of Arthur and Elena? On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate their journey from a chaotic gala to a life built on forgiveness? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And for everyone who has stayed with us until the very end, who believes that true strength is shown not in revenge, but in offering a second chance, please comment a heart of sterling. We are so grateful to share these stories with you. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more narratives that will change the world.